It began on a quiet Thursday morning, live on national television. Denzel Washington, known for his calm composure and sharp intellect, sat across from a journalist on Morning Focus Live. The interview was meant to discuss his upcoming film, but within minutes, the tone shifted. The host leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Mr. Washington, is it true you've seen classified evidence regarding the White House renovation project under former President Trump?" The studio fell silent. Cameras zoomed in. Denzel's expression hardened. "I'm not here to play politics," he said slowly. "But what I've seen, what I've been told, is far beyond corruption. It's betrayal." The host froze, unsure if she heard correctly. Denzel continued. "They called it the Renewal Project, but it was a cover. Trump ordered parts of the East Wing demolished to build a $250 million monument to himself. Private donors, offshore accounts, and fake contractors. It's all there." He reached into his jacket and placed a small envelope on the table. Inside are documents, plans, and signed approvals. The White House wasn't renovated. It was desecrated. Gasps filled the studio. Within minutes, hashtags like hashtag Denzel leaks, hashtag Trump files, and hashtag Beyond Corruption flooded social media. Cable news networks cut their scheduled programs to broadcast the clip. Denzel's phone buzzed nonstop, friends warning him, lawyers calling, reporters begging for statements. Back at his home in Los Angeles, security cameras blinked red in the darkness. His assistant whispered nervously, "Sir, the FBI called. They want to talk." Denzel stared out the window, his reflection split between the glass and the city lights. "Let them come," he murmured. "The truth's already out there." The clip exploded across the internet before the morning coffee cooled. Within an hour, every news channel in America was dissecting Denzel's words frame by frame. Fox called it Hollywood hysteria. CNN ran a red banner alert. Denzel Washington alleges criminal misuse of federal funds in Trump-era White House project. Twitter, no, X, erupted into chaos. Half the country hailed him as a hero. The other half demanded his arrest. Memes, conspiracy threads, AI voice parodies, it all spiraled in minutes. Denzel's name trended above Super Bowl. Inside Mar-a-Lago, Trump watched the footage on mute. His advisors hovered nervously, waiting for the storm. "Give me Truth Social," he barked. Minutes later, his post went live. Washed-up actor Denzel Washington spreading fake news. Saad, never met him. He's a puppet for the radical left. Hashtag MAGA, hashtag lies. But Denzel wasn't backing down. That afternoon, he released a short statement. "I have no political agenda. I'm not running for office. But when power turns sacred spaces into shrines of ego, that's not leadership, it's rot." That single line hit harder than any headline. Protesters appeared outside Trump Tower with signs reading "No kings, no shrines, no lies." A former White House staffer stepped forward anonymously, confirming part of Denzel's claims. Yes, there were renovations. Yes, there were sealed rooms. Nobody knew why. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., the Justice Department quietly opened a preliminary inquiry. Behind closed doors, names were whispered, contractors, donors, even a former cabinet secretary. Late that night, Denzel sat alone, his phone glowing in the dark. An unknown number texted, "You've gone too far. Stop before it stops you." He exhaled, unreadable. Then he deleted the message and whispered to himself, "Now I know I'm close." 2 days later, the whispers turned into a storm. Anonymous accounts began leaking fragments. Photos of architectural blueprints, cryptic emails signed with initials, bank transfer slips with foreign routing codes. The documents all pointed to one project name, Eagle Renewal. Denzel met quietly with an old friend from his early acting days, a man who'd since become a high-level contractor for the federal government. They met at a cafe in Georgetown, away from cameras. "You really want to open this box?" the man asked, eyes darting to the door. "Because once you do, there's no closing it." Denzel sipped his coffee. The box was opened the moment they built a monument to corruption inside the White House. The friend slid him a small, encrypted drive. "Everything's here. Payment records, secret meetings, and one name you'll recognize. That night, Denzel plugged the drive into his laptop. The screen flickered, revealing a folder titled Private, Restricted Clearance. Inside, blueprints marked Presidential Heritage Chamber, a project approved personally by Donald J. Trump, with funds routed through offshore subsidiaries connected to his real estate empire. But one file stood out, Videolog_2019_DC. It was grainy security footage from the East Wing, showing late-night construction and a familiar figure inspecting the site, Trump himself. The revelation chilled Denzel to the bone. He wasn't looking at a rumor anymore. It was proof. Suddenly, his lights flickered. Outside, a black SUV idled across the street. Denzel closed the laptop, his pulse racing. His assistant, startled by the noise, rushed in. "Sir, are you okay?" He nodded slowly. "I'm fine. But tomorrow, the world won't be." He knew what he had to do. Tomorrow, the files would go public. The next morning, the world woke up to chaos. Every major outlet, NBC, CNN, Reuters, even Al Jazeera, had one headline plastered across their screens. Washington exposes Eagle renewal. Evidence links Trump to secret White House chamber. The encrypted files Denzel had shared through a secure journalist collective called The Beacon had gone public overnight. Thousands of pages, time-stamped transactions, and one unmistakable image. Trump standing in the East Wing during the restricted construction hours, staring directly into the camera lens. The footage went viral within minutes. Late-night hosts, political commentators, and influencers all dove into the story. Some praised Denzel for his courage. Others accused him of treason. Hashtags trended globally. Hashtag Eagle Renewal. Hashtag Trump Chamber. Hashtag Hollywood Whistleblower. Trump's reaction came swiftly. From Mar-a-Lago, he issued a furious statement. "This is a total witch hunt by the Hollywood elite. Fake files. Fake videos. Fake people. Denzel Washington should be ashamed. I built America. He just reads scripts." But the denial only fueled the flames. Former White House staffers began appearing on talk shows, confirming that the renovation project had been shrouded in secrecy. One even admitted, "We weren't allowed near the East Wing for 6 months. They said it was classified heritage restoration. I always knew something was off." Meanwhile, Denzel's phone rang nonstop. Offers for interviews poured in. But instead of chasing airtime, he went quiet. No posts, no statements, just silence. In that silence, his message became even louder. By nightfall, protests broke out in front of the Capitol. Candles, chants, and signs that read, "Truth doesn't need permission." Inside his Los Angeles home, Denzel watched the news, the light of the TV flickering against his face. His expression wasn't triumphant. It was heavy, knowing. The battle had only just begun. By dawn, Trump had declared total war. His team of lawyers, media strategists, and loyal surrogates went into overdrive. The narrative flipped almost instantly. "This isn't a scandal," Fox anchors repeated. "It's a smear campaign led by Hollywood radicals." On Truth Social, Trump unleashed a stream of all-caps fury. "Denzel Washington is a fraud, a failed actor trying to stay relevant. I will sue every media outlet that spreads these lies." Within hours, lawsuits were filed. Cease and desist letters flooded every newsroom that aired Denzel's footage. The FBI announced an internal investigation. Not into Trump, but into the source of the leaks. It was classic political theater, a counterstrike meant to flip the target. Still, Denzel didn't flinch. That evening, he broke his silence on a live interview with Anderson Cooper. Calm but sharp, he stared into the camera. "This isn't about politics. It's about truth. I'm not afraid of lawsuits. I'm afraid of what happens when we stop holding power accountable." The clip became an instant cultural flashpoint. Millions watched. Millions aged. Trump supporters flooded the internet with edited memes showing Denzel in clown makeup. But others, veterans, teachers, civil servants, began sending messages of support. "You said what we couldn't." Behind the scenes, Washington, D.C. was boiling. The Senate Ethics Committee requested access to the leaked files. A federal contractor anonymously confirmed the financial irregularities. One senator even whispered to a reporter, "If this story holds, it's bigger than Watergate." But as night fell, the pushback grew darker. A journalist from the Beacon was followed by unmarked vehicles. Denzel's home security system detected 2 unknown entries on his network. The message was clear: silence or consequences. He looked at his reflection in the dark TV screen and muttered, "So this is how truth feels when it's winning." 3 days after the leak, Washington, D.C. no longer slept. The corridors of power buzzed with fear and rumor. Behind closed doors, intelligence officers, senators, and political advisors met in unmarked rooms. Words like containment, damage control, and asset exposure echoed across encrypted channels. Denzel, meanwhile, had gone off-grid. He wasn't hiding. He was hunting. A retired NSA analyst, who had once served under 3 administrations, reached out through a burner email. The message was short: "You're not wrong, but you're only scratching the surface. Meet me where power pretends to be silent, the Willard." At midnight, in a dimly lit hotel bar just blocks from the White House, Denzel met the analyst, an older man with weary eyes and a voice softened by decades of secrecy. He slid a black folder across the table. Inside were photos, redacted documents, and one memo labeled, "Eagle Renewal, Executive Contingency Plan." The memo revealed something terrifying. The chamber wasn't just a private construction. It was part of an experimental communications bunker linked to encrypted international lines. A shadow network, one that bypassed Congress, the Pentagon, even the NSA. It connected directly to a handful of foreign advisors and one oligarch with ties to Russian energy firms. Trump called it his legacy project, the analyst whispered. But internally, it was known as the throne room. Denzel's mind raced. "Why show me this?" "Because you still have the stage," the analyst replied. "We don't. The truth needs a face that America listens to." That night, Denzel walked back toward his car, the Capitol dome glowing faintly behind him. Reporters swarmed outside the hotel, shouting questions, flashes bursting like lightning. He said nothing, just raised a hand and kept walking. Behind him, the analyst disappeared into the night. Hours later, the man's apartment was found empty. No trace, no records. Denzel finally understood. He wasn't exposing a scandal anymore. He was standing inside one .by week's end. The story had split America clean down the middle. News networks didn't just cover the scandal, they lived inside it. On Fox, anchors called Denzel a fallen Hollywood puppet. On CNN, he was a patriot risking everything to defend democracy. Trump, sensing the chaos, weaponized it. He turned every interview, every rally, every social media post into a theater of rage. "These Hollywood hypocrites," he shouted to a roaring crowd in Texas. "They hate you more than they hate me." Denzel Washington is the face of the corrupt elite pretending to be righteous. The crowd erupted, waving red hats and signs that read, "Lock him up." The irony was lost on them. But Denzel didn't take the bait. He appeared once, and only once, on a late-night program hosted by Trevor Noah. "Calm, controlled," he said. "When people in power lie long enough, truth starts to sound like treason. I didn't start this war. I'm just refusing to lose it." The clip broke the internet. Over 100 million views in 24 hours. Memes, duets, edits, the image of Denzel looking straight into the camera became a symbol. Some called it the stare that shook Washington. But in the White House, Trump's inner circle was collapsing. Jared Kushner reportedly urged him to let it die down. Ivanka avoided cameras altogether. Inside sources leaked that the president had demanded loyalty checks among his staff. "Find out who's talking to Hollywood," he'd said, slamming his desk. Then came the moment that changed everything. During a televised rally, Trump went off script. His voice cracked with rage. "You think Denzel knows corruption? I invented corruption, and I'm still here." The crowd froze. Advisors scrambled to mute microphones, but the clip was already viral. That one sentence, unscripted, unfiltered, became the story. And for the first time, even his own supporters began to question what they were defending. Denzel watched from home, the glow of the TV reflecting off his eyes. He whispered to himself, he just confessed, and they'll still call it fake. But the tide was turning. The truth had finally drawn blood. That'd be why the following Monday, Washington, D.C. felt like it was holding its breath. You could feel the tension in the air. Even the morning newscasters spoke in half-whispers, as if raising their voices might shatter the fragile balance holding the nation together. A joint congressional inquiry was announced. The FBI, under immense public pressure, reopened several dormant cases related to the Eagle Renewal Project. Subpoenas were issued overnight. The Justice Department requested Trump's financial disclosures from his final year in office. For the first time in years, the system appeared to be turning back on itself. But corruption doesn't die quietly. It adapts. Leaks began flooding the internet. Private messages, doctored photos, deepfake videos, all painting Denzel as a foreign agent, a man bought by globalist interests. One clip even showed him allegedly meeting with foreign donors in a dim cafe. Experts quickly debunked it, but the damage was done. The narrative was out there, and millions believed it. Still, in the chaos, something shifted. A group of ex-CIA whistleblowers released a 47-page dossier confirming parts of Denzel's claims. It detailed how a parallel financial network had been built under the guise of White House restoration projects. The paper trail led directly to shell companies in the Cayman Islands, controlled by figures close to the Trump organization. Congress demanded hearings. Cable news went into emergency coverage mode. America wasn't just watching, it was obsessing. Trump, cornered but defiant, appeared on national TV. With his signature defiance, he declared, "They can't beat me fair and square, so they invent their lies. Denzel Washington? He's Hollywood's soldier, but I'm the people's general." The crowd behind him roared, but his voice trembled, a note of panic buried beneath the bravado. At that very moment, Denzel sat quietly in his study. The headlines flickered across his phone. Congress moves to investigate Trump over secret chamber. He didn't smile. He just whispered, "We're past politics now. This is survival." The world was watching, and for the first time, the walls around power had started to crack. The investigation had reached critical mass. Capitol Hill turned into a fortress, flashing lights, barricades, and endless crowds chanting outside. Inside, a dozen committees battled to control the narrative. Testimonies leaked faster than they could be redacted. Each revelation was darker than the last. It wasn't just money laundering. It was espionage, influence trading, a secret flow of classified information tied to construction contractors and offshore accounts. What had begun as renovation was now described by insiders as an underground power vault, a chamber built not for history, but for control. For Denzel, the cost of truth began to show. His security detail doubled. Friends distanced themselves. Studio executives whispered that he had gone political, that no one would hire him again. Yet every threat, every lost endorsement only strengthened his resolve. "If I lose everything but keep my integrity," he told a journalist off camera, "then I've gained more than they ever will." Meanwhile, Trump's empire began to fracture. Loyal aides resigned under pressure. One of his attorneys turned state's witness. Late-night calls between Mar-a-Lago and unnamed officials were intercepted by investigators. Even conservative donors started to withdraw support. But the former president wasn't done fighting. At a rally in Arizona, his voice thundered with a mix of rage and desperation. "This is not about Denzel. It's about you. They want to take your voice, your country, your freedom. I'm the only thing standing between you and tyranny." The crowd screamed in approval, yet something had shifted. The spark of invincibility that once surrounded him was gone. He looked smaller, older, cornered. That same night, a helicopter circled above Denzel's home. Drones appeared near his property, buzzing like insects. Anonymous threats flooded his inbox. The FBI advised him to leave Los Angeles. "You've stirred a hornet's nest," one agent warned. But Denzel refused to disappear. He stood on his balcony, watching the city lights below, and murmured to himself, "They can silence men, but they can't silence momentum." The truth had already escaped containment. The tower was shaking, and everyone knew what came next. It was a night that would be etched into history, not as a headline, but as a warning. The world watched as Congress prepared to release its final report. Security was at maximum alert. Armored vehicles lined the streets, and drone patrols swept the skies over Washington, D.C. The city looked like a capital bracing for a coup, not a confession. Denzel Washington wasn't on the guest list, but his presence was everywhere. The investigation had begun with his words, his voice, his refusal to stay silent. Now, even the most loyal networks couldn't deny the evidence. Financial documents, covert wire transfers, recorded calls from inside the White House. Each revelation stripped away another layer of illusion, until even Trump's staunchest defenders were forced into silence. Then, the live broadcast began. Chairwoman Ellis stepped up to the microphone, her hands trembling slightly. The committee finds overwhelming evidence of systemic corruption, obstruction of justice, and misuse of executive authority during the renovation of the White House. The room erupted. Gasps, shouts. Reporters sprinted to their phones. And as the world processed the unthinkable, Trump appeared, live, unfiltered, furious. "This is a witch hunt," he barked. "A Hollywood plot cooked up by washed-up actors and traitors. Denzel Washington thinks he's a hero, but he's a liar." Within seconds, social media ignited. Hashtag No More Kings trended globally. Millions of users shared Denzel's past interviews, his steady voice, his unwavering conviction. One clip resurfaced everywhere. "Truth doesn't destroy nations. Lies do." That quote became a movement. Protesters carried it on banners through every major city. People who had never agreed on anything suddenly marched side by side. By midnight, Trump's inner circle fractured completely. Arrest warrants were rumored. His private jet, once a symbol of untouchable power, sat motionless on the tarmac. And in Los Angeles, Denzel stood before a silent audience at a charity gala. He didn't talk about politics. He didn't gloat. He just said, "You can rebuild a house. You can't rebuild a conscience." The crowd rose in thunderous applause. Cameras flashed. History had turned. That night, as the lights of Washington flickered under the weight of truth, America faced itself in the mirror. There were no kings, only consequences. When truth meets power, the world doesn't stay silent. It shakes. Denzel Washington didn't just challenge corruption. He forced it into the light. And when the lies finally burned away, all that was left was reality. No kings, no immunity, just accountability. If you believe the truth still matters, don't scroll. Share it.